Hello and welcome to week 6 of the Rail Fence Quilt Along with Gioia Studio. This is our final week and our final step. We will make our binding strips and attach the binding. Before we start, make sure your quilt is basted all around the edges. Try to get as close to the edge as possible with your stitches. Feel free to use a stitch length of 4 or 5. Basting helps keep the quilt in place as you attach the binding. First, let's start by trimming all the excess fabric from our quilt. Use the ruler as a guide and align it with the edge of the quilt. Trim each side of your quilt until all of the edges are clean. If you have a big quilt, you can trim on the floor with the cutting mat underneath or trim on a dining room table. Of course, using the cutting mat underneath. Next, take your fabric for the binding. It should be ironed and without wrinkles. First, find the fold and align the fold with the cutting mat. This step is very similar to how we made the strip sets. Make a clean edge. Next, measure 2 1/4 inches. Align the ruler with the fabric and the mat and slice. Continue to do this until you have enough strips. Calculate what you need by adding up the perimeter of your quilt plus 12 inches. If you want to be safe, calculate the perimeter plus 20 inches. Once you have the strips cut, it's time to attach them. Lay one strip good side down. My ruler has an indication for 45 degrees. I'm aligning the edge of my strip with that line of 45 degrees, and now I'm just marking it. Starting from the corner, draw a 45-degree angle. I'm using chalk for this video so you can see the line. I recommend you use a pencil or a thinner marking instrument. Next, take one strip and lay it good side up. Then take the strip with the 45-degree line. Both fabrics should be laying good side to good side. Now, take the 2 pieces and stitch across the line. You should use a lighter weight thread to attach your binding. I use this heavy thread for you to see on the video. Check for accuracy. If all is good, trim the excess. Align the ruler at the stitch line and trim to 1/4 inch. Set your seam. Finger press the seam open and then iron open the seam. After the seams are pressed open, fold the binding directly in half and iron it all the way to the end. I like to roll the strip like this. I put a little binding clip at the end and then rotate the strip around it. I keep going until I have all my binding in a nice neat roll. I find that a roll is easy to manage when I'm binding. Let's attach the binding to the quilt. Start on any edge. Take the binding, align the open edge of the binding with the raw edge of the quilt. Find a place that is about 1/4 of a way down. Start the binding at this place. Notice the tail of the binding that I am not sewing. You want that tail free so that you can close your binding later. You can clip or pin the binding in place or just pay close attention. It's up to you. Sew the binding at 1/4 inch seam, but stop when you are 1/4 inch from the corner edge. You can mark the stopping point with a pin. There are different ways to do this. I'm showing you how I like to do it. I like to backstitch and cut my thread. Then I lift the presser foot. I place my binding to the back. I create a crease of 45 degrees. The raw edges are flush with the raw edges of the quilt. Next, I hold the crease in place and I bring the binding back towards me. As I bring it, I make a fold. The fold aligns with the edge. Now I sew the binding into place. Now I'm getting close to where I started. I want to stop and leave a good distance between the tail. This is a trick from Jenny Doan of the Missouri Star Quilting Company. The tails should overlap 2¼ inches, which is the same as the width of my binding strips. Lay one tail down, put a pin at the very end of it, lay the other tail over it, measure from the pin 2¼ inches, mark, and cut. You might wrestle a little bit with the binding tails because at this point, most of the binding is stitched down, and this makes it difficult to maneuver and sew the pieces together. My trick is to gather the quilt, clip it in place, and now my tails have less strain. Put good side to good side and sew corner to corner. Unclip your quilt and gently lay down the closed binding. Trim the excess and stitch into place. If you decide to machine stitch your binding, I recommend a thread that is the same color as your fabric. When you machine stitch, use a length of 3. Pin or clip the binding into place. I break all the rules. I prefer to use nothing, and instead I use my hands to pull the binding in place as I go. As you arrive at the corner, slow down. Fold the edge into place. Slowly move your needle until it is over the corner fold. With the needle down, lift the presser foot and pivot. And that's it. Just continue like this to sew all the way around until your binding is in place. As a side note, if you want to do your binding by hand, I recommend that you use a hem stitch. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you again soon. Grazie mille. Arrivederci. Ciao ciao. Bye bye.